afternoon, everybody. Christine Barconi here in the NBC4i Streaming Center with Sports Director Jared Smalley, former Buckeye coach and our analyst Bill Conley, and sports reporter Justin Holbrook. Good afternoon to you guys. Excited to have the Buckeyes hopefully get back on the gridiron here in just a few short days.
Hey, before we get started,
keep your fingers crossed.
That's exactly.
That's
Well,
why I said
hey, related to that, I'm not kidding. So last week we did this show, and when the show went offline, we got the announcement about Maryland, okay? Here's why I'm prefacing this. I just got this email from Ohio State, all right? Game is still being played Saturday, all right? So take a deep breath there. However, Ohio State has determined that family members of the players and coaching staffs competing this fall will no longer be permitted in any university sporting event.
Whoa.
Decision is immediate. It means no family members will be in Ohio Stadium Saturday when Ohio State and Indiana meet. That means that you know how we've had a few the attendance at Ohio Stadium has been around 12 to 1,400 for the first two games. Mm-hmm. Take most of that away now. So we can guarantee Saturday's crowd will be the smallest in Ohio Stadium history. On account, there will be nobody there.
Are you going to go? Is the press still welcome to come?
Yeah, we can still cover the game, but that is what they've decided to do. There will be a limited number of media allowed to document the game from the press box, so I anticipate that we'll still be, in there anyway. But that's quite the change here at 2:04 as we get started.
Wow, that's interesting.
But
Andy
they're still
Long,
playing.
If you're watching, breaking news. Broken. Jared Smalley, you heard it first.
Oh, God.
Taking on the Hoosiers, they are coming to town. Crazy to say that this is the biggest matchup of the year. I was reading some copy earlier. Ohio State has won the past 25 matchups dating back to 1991. Mm-hmm. That was a good year, I hear. Year of my birth.
Oh, boy.
Thanks.
No, boy, that's not good. That hurts.
Sorry.
Hurts. Some of us are old people.
Justin's keeping his mouth quiet.
Nothing to say.
Justin has nothing to say.
You know,
I'm not stepping in that one either.
But, Coach, when you think about that's a really good way to get into this, because when you think back to those Indiana teams with Anthony Thompson, the incredible running back they had back then, who I think won the Maxwell Award or was at least a candidate for that award. He was an outstanding running back for them, and the catalyst for those teams being excellent and good enough to obviously beat Ohio State back then. Bill, I think it's an easy argument when you look at what Indiana's put on the field right now and say this is easily the best team they've had since then, and maybe better than then.
Well, it's definitely the most complete team they've had. We've always known, especially under Coach Allen the last couple of years, they've had a really good offense. But this year, really the defense is what's really setting them apart different than any other Indiana teams in the recent past. Yeah,
agreed. And Justin, when you think about that defense, they're number one in the league in sacks, number one in the league in interceptions. They blitz about 80 to 90% of the time. They will take risks. Sometimes they get burned for them, but typically they've been able to recover from those because they make the big play on the back end. And it's a defense that will take chances and will make big plays because of it. And anytime, no matter how good your offense is, when you're getting ready to face a defense like that, you have to be a little concerned.
You do, and the reason for concern is what Coach just said, is the balance of that defense. They don't really have a weak spot. They're number 3 in rush defense, only give up 111 yards a game. They're number 4 in pass defense. And overall in the Big Ten, they're number 4 in defense, only giving up 19 points a game. So there really is no weakness when you look at this Indiana team. You can't say, all right, let's attack them here, and then we'll be able to, take advantage of their weaknesses over there. They really don't have any of those that you can really hone in on. Mm-hmm. It's just game plan that's going to come down to what Ohio State decides to do in terms of run the ball, pass the ball, when to do it and when to not.
Well, if we're going to get nitpicky about it, and Bill, let's do that, because why not? Indiana.
That's what we do.
That's what we do. Indiana, not great necessarily stopping the run, and also not great running the ball. In fact, near the bottom of the Big Ten in running the ball. So from a ground perspective, as your Ohio State viewing it, what do you see that's advantageous on both those sides?
Well, I think, first of all, if you look at the separation between offense and defense, we're much more – everybody thinks Indiana's got a great offense. They do have a good offense, but we're much, much better offense when you look at all the major categories. Defense is a difference, but the difference is a lot closer. So it's not like, our defense is a bad defense. But I think Justin hit on the thing you got to talk about is the sacks they have had. They lead the Big Ten in sacks, and they come from all different levels of defense.
Mm-hmm.
They're cornerback, a linebacker, and a lineman. So their whole defense is a solid defense, and that's what's a little bit different. It's not just guys up front, and they might have three of the best corners in the country. Between them, they have 6 of the 10 interceptions. They got 6 of them.
Agreed. I think, and Christine, when you look at it overall, it makes sense that they're 9th in the country. When you look at it statistically, you look at who they've, the way they've performed, not necessarily who they've played, but the way they've performed in their games, I think is a fair way to view what Indiana is this year. Obviously, Penn State isn't. I mean, they haven't won a game, all right? So they're not what Penn State typically would be.
Right.
But Penn State should have won their game when they played at the beginning of the year.
Definitely.
If not for 3 turnovers, Indiana doesn't have that chance to win the game.
Interesting touchdown at the end.
Very
too.
Interesting dynamics of that score. And then, obviously Michigan State is not what Michigan State is. Mm-hmm. Michigan, most assuredly, is not what Michigan's supposed to be. And the other game is Rutgers. So, from that standpoint, it's not like they've beaten the best teams in the world here, and so you shouldn't get all carried away. But I do think from a talent standpoint, they've got guys on that team that everybody would want. I think Ty Freifogel at receiver had 200 yards last week. Everybody would want him. He's got outstanding skill, great strength for a receiver, and very good speed. I just think, it's absolutely going to be the test of the regular season.
Justin, Jared, Coach, do you guys think had it not been for COVID and only playing, within the conference, if Ohio State had been playing different teams, if everybody else had been playing different teams from the big conferences, do you think Indiana would be in the top 10 right now with the talent that they have?
I think there's a good chance of it. The thing that impresses me, I looked at going into last week's game for Indiana. On the offensive side of the ball, there are 8 different states were represented. And you look on the defense, it was like 5. So what they have done within the last few years, they've recruited much better. They found some out-of-state areas, especially Florida, where they can get better skilled players, more speed and things like that. So I think they've been building toward this thing. Now, how much of a difference between their talent and our talent, we'll find out Saturday. Mm-hmm. But they have done a much better job recruiting.
Yeah.
I think the short answer to your question, Christine, is no, because of what the odds are in this game. Ohio State is a 21-point favorite, and that says a lot when you look at an Indiana team that is in the top 10. I mean, I don't know the last time a top 10 team has been an underdog by that much. You know what I mean? Yeah, they probably would have beat all the MAC teams or whoever they had in their non-conference schedule. But if they had played a top SEC team that's maybe not even ranked, then yeah, maybe we aren't looking at an undefeated Indiana team at this point in the season. But this is where they're at right now, and they've got to take advantage of this moment. And obviously, this is the game of the year with the Big Ten East on the line.
It is. I think when you look at, from Ohio State's standpoint, right, this is called Buckeye breakdown. So we're looking at it from their standpoint. Mm-hmm. The first 3 games, obviously not getting to play last week is a significant setback. From an injury standpoint, who cares? They don't really have that many, and they just haven't played very much football. So they would have loved to have had that opportunity last week, even if it had been a tough game, and it could have been. Maryland obviously has a passing offense that is something that can give teams real problems. And I think that would have been good to see how they would have responded from that Rutgers second half and built on that. The big thing that I was talking with a couple of players with yesterday, in particular Josh Myers, the center, was about the run game. They're running it for 200 yards a game, more than 200 yards. That's pretty good. Most teams in America would gladly trade you the opportunity to run for 200 yards a game because it means they're controlling the line of scrimmage and it means they're controlling time of possession. Mm-hmm. In Ohio State's case, it doesn't look as good. And we talked about that a little bit. And Josh made a really good point. He says, it's not good enough. It's not pretty. And we know it's close, but we're just not hitting it. And what I think, Coach, he's really referring to is the fact they don't have many 20-plus yard gains. And, you look at the one from Penn State, the first play of the game, that's a reverse to a receiver. In terms of the traditional line it up between the tackles or outside the tackles and turning upfield, they don't have a ton of those big gainers like you would see J.K. Dobbins turn, a 5 or 6 yarder into a 25 or 30 yarder with his elusiveness. And that, I think, is the component that from a visual standpoint, when you look at the games, is that the thing that's missing most?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the thing is that Ohio State traditionally has always has one of the top 3 rushers in the conference, usually 1 or 2. Not the case this year. The fortunate thing going this week, Indiana's is not very good either. But it's a situation where the other thing which you have to do to have a confidence in your rushing attack is you got to score touchdowns in the red zone. And that's where we got to be better. Now, I'll tell you, Indiana's got a good red zone defense. We've got to put them in the end zone when we get the ball down inside the 20-yard line. That's another part of it. Yeah, but there has not been the breakaway runs that we're used to, especially by the running backs. Again, jet sweeps to slot receivers, that's a different story. But to be a more balanced football team offensively, we've got to get more big plays running the ball on offense.
Christine, we got any comments or questions from folks today?
Just a lot of go Buckeyes. Bob wants to know if anybody else is day drinking. I knew
Wait, what?
Bob Caps. What's up, Bob? No,
come on,
we're
man.
not.
It's Wednesday.
Looks
dude.
like you are.
Sounds like a good idea.
I mean,
I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that's a bold move, bold choice for 2:00 Wednesday.
But, I don't know.
To each their own.
I'm here for it.
It is a pandemic.
Anyway, so if you have any more questions or if you want me to read your comments out loud like I just did to see Jared Smalley's reaction, feel free. And to recap the breaking news that we actually had at the very top of the show here, somebody was listening to us because we just sent out a push notification that there would be no parents at sporting events, no parents in the shoe this weekend that Jared got an email about a short time ago. So.
Yep. Hey, Justin, let me ask you something about, when you talk about Indiana, the big thing that's the obvious, you can notice it immediately when you watch one of their games is Michael Penix, their quarterback.
Yeah.
So when you take a deeper dive into his season, his statistics are not – they're okay. They're pretty good. Right. Doesn't throw a ton of picks. He's thrown some very poor balls and had them picked off. But I think he's only thrown 3 in 4 games. That's not terrible.
No.
His percentage is around 61% for the year. It actually was a little bit lower before the Michigan State game. But he does make these spectacular plays. I mean, he can put the ball on the money and put them in some really advantageous spots. So I think he's enough of a threat that if your defense isn't playing well, I think he can give you a lot of problems.
I think the thing that they're doing really well with him is that Coach Allen has really found a way to use him where he's best at, right? He's not a rushing quarterback. He reminds me very much of, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but reminds me of a Cardale or a Dwayne, where you're not going to rely on him for his feet and running the football, but they know what to play and where to throw the ball and where to put him in the right situations where he doesn't really make a mistake. So He had 2 interceptions last week, but he only has 3 on the season. So they're doing the best they can with him. I think he's a great talent, and he's got a really good arm, and he can throw the ball long. But like you said, he's not a completion percentage guy. So what they're doing is they're finding the best spots for him. And when he has those times to take advantage of that, he really does.
And Bill, something else Indiana has that Penn State had, for example, is an excellent tight end. And when you combine that with Freifogel and the other receiving threats, there's some diversity in that passing attack.
Yeah, he spreads the ball out just like Justin Fields does. Mm-hmm. It's very similar in relation to strategies offensively by both these teams. Obviously, Indiana relies more on the pass than we do. But, look at Hendershot, the tight end. He's got 3 touchdown passes. Our Jeremy Ruckers caught 3 touchdown passes. Mm-hmm. Our 2 receivers, Olave and Wilson, actually have a better game average in terms of yards than their guys do. But they're good receivers. The thing, the key to the team that protects their quarterback the best is going to win the game, because Indiana will come at you. They take, as we mentioned, they take gambles. They're going to be bringing corners. They'll be linebackers. You got to protect the quarterbacks. You got to protect Justin Fields. If we do that, we should be fine.
And Christine, one point about that, when you look at the Rutgers game, that was a point of contention for the offensive line.
Got a lot of comments on here saying that we got to have a better second half and different things like that. Agreeing with you guys,
especially the penalties up front on the offensive line. Harry Miller had 3 holding calls. Mm-hmm. Wyatt Davis had a holding call, which is very interesting. It is kind of a little bit of a fluke play on that one, but I mean, nonetheless, it was called. But yeah, they've got to be a little bit more secure. And they're going to face all kinds of different looks. They're going to face some unique stunts and blitzes and things that maybe they haven't seen from other teams so far this year.
Likely not as many trick plays.
Well, I'll tell you what, if Indiana can run half as many trick plays successfully as Rutgers did, they're in for a heck of a day.
We have a question here for Coach Phil Sorrentino. He wants Coach Conley to rate
Bill.
to rate this game from a complete recruiting perspective.
Well, I think it's, again, we have some players from Indiana, obviously, on our football team. We get the better players. Recruiting wise, if Indiana would happen to get lucky and win the game, which I don't see that happening, that would help them in recruiting. But we got the better recruiting base, obviously. We can go anywhere really in the country, have a chance of getting the athletes. Just look at our roster now. But again, as mentioned before, Indiana's done a much better job than the past of going out of state and finding some areas where they can get some speed and skill that they haven't had in the past.
Yeah, that's true. And the other thing is Indiana, there's some really, established Division I programs obviously in the state. Notre Dame is up at the top of the state with Purdue and Indiana, right there in the state of Indiana. Yet the best players typically don't go there. And, they've got to find a way at Indiana to flip that. They've got to make sure that the best players like a Pete Werner out of Indianapolis or Terry McLaurin, who came from Indianapolis, don't leave the state. And until they can get into that repetition, it's going to be really hard, to flip the recruiting where you're getting into that top part of the Big Ten stratosphere from recruit. Unless you can get the best guys from where you are, from your 4-hour footprint, if you will. Luke Fickell talks about that all the time at Cincinnati because that's where they have really turned their program to where it is now at a top 10 program. They get the best guys they can from that general geographic area, and then they'll go fishing elsewhere to see where they need to fill in spots. But if you can dominate your home footprint, you're in pretty good shape.
Coach, I kind of have a question for you. You said that whenever you were looking at the roster last week, there were 5 or 6 different states represented on both sides of the ball. Is maybe significant for Indiana, but is that a lot for, say, an Ohio State and Alabama, Notre Dame, those kind of programs like that, or are we a lot more diverse? I actually do not know.
Yeah, we're more diverse because we got a better program.
Yeah.
And we've been more successful over a longer time period.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, we started really, if you look, 4 decades ago, we started going a lot to Florida and places like that and having success. And then Urban Meyer comes in, he expanded that. We get players out of Texas, California, and so forth. So success breeds success. So obviously we've been able to do that for a longer period of time. Indiana has to do it because of necessity. Mm-hmm. Where we're a little different. We can be more selective on our recruits and things like that. They have to recruit an athlete to come in and be an impact player for their program. That's different than us.
Yeah, that's a good point. In particular, when you look at recruiting, and recruiting rankings are a guessing game, right? They are by no means in cement. But when you look at the typically forecasted groups of top 10 or top 15 from your own state, typically every kid in that top 10 has an Ohio State offer, and most of those kids are taking that offer. If they're not going to OSU, they're going to a place that there might be a different family connection or some other reason to go. And the reason that you notice the ones is because they're rare. Jackson Carman, for example, a few years back, was down to Ohio State and Clemson, and he went to Clemson. And that was the famous deal where Dabo told him Urban was going to retire, and Dabo was right. That stuff happens in recruiting. And, on occasion you lose the big fish from your own place, but typically you don't. And that's, I think, the big part of that's like the base. Those are the bricks of the house. At the bottom level, that's your basement. And if you can build on that, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Got it. Interesting. Right. There's people commenting actually right now. So for those of you who are just joining us, this is kind of a fluid stream. Jared told us some breaking news at the top of the show here that there would be no parents in Ohio Stadium come Saturday. Did they cite specifically, Jared, due to COVID?
Yeah, it's due to the restrictions not only in Franklin County but it's in the state of Ohio as well. So it's more erring on the side of caution, if we're being honest. But the one thing we can't do is nothing. Right. And I think that's in response to that. And until things get better here, I think that's kind of where we're headed.
Got it. What did Coach Day have to say at his press conference? I didn't get a chance to listen to it.
Well, Ryan gave a lot of respect for Indiana, as you would imagine, and that's not just lip service. I mean, it's just obvious when you turn the tape on. They are worthy of being right now a top 10 team, considering not only who they've played, who they've beaten, but how they have performed in those games. I think the big curiosity, we actually just heard from Justin Fields a little bit ago, and Bill, that's one of my curiosities going into the game, is not only how can the offensive line pick up this accelerated rush package that Indiana can put together, but from the quarterback standpoint, Justin he hasn't thrown an interception all year. I think he's thrown 3 as a Buckeye. 2 were in the Fiesta Bowl last year. He doesn't make a lot of bad decisions, and he will be forced likely on Saturday into making some pretty rapid decisions. I'm curious to see how he'll handle all that.
Yeah, and also part of that's the game plan Ohio State coaches are going to come up with. So what do you do to slow down a pass rush? Then you run some screen passes, some draw plays, some things a little bit different you've done before, multiple formations, shifts, and motions, which makes them think instead of just lay their ears back and come after you.
Yeah, and let's talk about that, Bill. So when you're talking about quick hitting, what all could that involve? Does that include just little drag routes to the tight end or stuff like? Run us through what would a package like that look like?
That's a really good point. I think the tight end's a key, not only on drag routes, but on option routes on the linebackers, especially if they expect linebacker blitzes, just replace that guy with a tight end, hit him for that 5 or 6 yard option route. Also, quick screens and tunnel screens to the outside can get rid of the ball quickly. Almost in every situation, I think the coaching staff has to prepare for a quick outlet pass in case of a blitz.
Yeah, soft coverage can obviously lead to some first downs and lead to you not having the football, which is a big problem as well. Justin, about Justin Fields, look, his statistics are absurd. I mean, he's been extraordinary this year. When you consider how do you get the sense in listening to him that it physically pains him to see a ball hit the turf?
It does seem like that. Yeah. It does seem like anytime that he makes a mistake, and a mistake in our book is just an incomplete pass, but he makes so few of them that it's almost a personal affront to him, almost like a Michael Jordan missing a shot. It feels that way.
That's a good point.
When you don't make that pass, and it's just, even if it hits the receiver's hands, it just seems like, man, what just happened?
Which a bunch of them have.
So well, so many times.
You're right. Poor Julian Fleming. Oh, that Rutgers, he was
wide open. That could have been a touchdown too.
You couldn't have walked it out. I mean, you couldn't have handed it. Oh, poor kid.
Just to go back to what Coach was talking about with the tight ends, when you guys were saying in that Penn State game where they had those 2 deep touchdowns to Chris Olave, both of those is where they had a 2-set tight end. So this is not just a run the ball when they have a 2-set tight end. They're pretty balanced this year. I think like 60-40 of run pass, which is a lot better than it was last year. So you can't just assume that they're going to run the ball or a quick out. The out is always there, but it opens up the field so much so when you have a guy like Farrell and a guy like Ruckert on both sides of the ball or on opposite sides of the ball on the same field at the same time.
And Bill, let me ask you one other follow-up question about the blitz. Is how big a factor is hitting them on first down if they're pinning their ears back and coming up on the edges to go up the middle, to find a crease in the middle, to get your first down ground game going to the point where you slow them down, make them think and react instead of teeing off?
Yeah, I think he has a couple of points you bring up there, which is really good. If you can hit him with a quick hitter up the middle to break one, that'll make them rethink their strategy some. And also, the other part, and I think Christine hit it a while ago, it's going to be important to come out fast in this football game and stay at it for 4 quarters. We cannot relax. And, I always say first down is offense. Everybody talks about third down conversions. I think that's true, but first down to me is always a key. When you can get 4 to 5 yards on first down, it really opens up your playbook as an offensive coaching staff on what you can do. When it gets to be a 2nd and 8, that's a different story. So come out fast, send some good first down runs, open things up, and things will be okay.
The other thing I'm curious to see is, we saw at Penn State, and we saw even a little bit against Rutgers, Ryan Day, man, I mean, he is an aggressive play caller. I mean, he will do some stuff on 3rd and even 4th down that takes some courage. We'll put it that way here on the internet. Takes some courage to make those calls. And he has, they've already faked a punt now. They faked a punt against Rutgers. I'm curious to see how aggressive he gets in special teams this week, understanding that they might not have a tougher opponent than this the rest of the way. They're humans. They have eyeballs. They've seen the games. They know what's happening at Michigan. They know what's happening elsewhere. I think that's my biggest curiosity, is just how aggressive Ryan Day is going into this on Saturday.
Yeah, the one thing about Ryan Day, he's one of those coaches that believe if you have it on your call sheet, you can run it.
Yeah.
Don't shy away from anything. And also part of being a great offense is you've got to be unpredictable in relation to down and distance situations. And so it's like the throw on fourth down. I mean, you've got it now. That defense has to prepare for that. You can't relax and expect it just to be a run up the middle or off tackle or something like that. So if you have it on your play sheet, he's not afraid to call it.
And that aggressiveness is not just for special teams. It's going to be in the defense too, and how much Kerry Combs feels confidence in those defensive backs, because you get more aggressive, then you rely a little bit more on your DBs. And we've seen that there's been, broken coverages, can't make some tackles sometimes. So we're going to have to see that secondary step up. We hope to be more aggressive on defense, blitz on a third down when they want to.
Yeah, Greg Madison made that point today in our interviews that his biggest takeaway from the second half at Rutgers wasn't necessarily coverage; it was just tackling. It was a pure tackling scenario, especially on the back end, where some of those younger defensive backs or some of those less experienced defensive backs, I'll say that, didn't do a good job wrapping up and weren't very physical. And I think they still feel pretty good about where they are in the first group. I think they really like Seven Banks. Obviously, Sean Wade, he's had a few rough moments, but come on. I mean, you know what he is. He's an All-American caliber player who isn't afraid to hit people. He's proven that in his career. And then, the safeties, Josh Proctor will put a hurting on people. I mean, they've got people who are physical in that, and that it will allow them, I think, when the game is competitive, to turn the heat up at times and still feel confident in the back end. But yeah, that's a great point. That's why they play the game.
One last question for you guys. How are we looking as far as games this week? I know we had a ton of games across the country canceled.
Yeah.
Are there any canceled this week?
Yeah, there was a game today out west. I want to say Utah State just announced they were canceled. We're still waiting to hear on Maryland. Maryland didn't practice yesterday. Obviously, they had the outbreak last week that forced a postponement. They're supposed to play Michigan State Saturday. I have not seen in the past 20, 30 minutes whether that game is still on. I think they were going to try to make a call on that by today. But you're right, Christine. I mean, nearly a quarter of the games across the country last week did not happen.
Well, New York City just canceled in-person teaching again. They're back to fully remote. So just lots of breaking news happening right now.
Wow.
So
with that game out west, I think that makes 8 for this week, and it's only Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay. And
that's my curiosity, right? I mean, if there's a COVID problem at a campus, you could get up to Saturday morning, hypothetically, and pull the plug on a game. So, hey, never take it for granted that you are playing for sure. As we learned last week at 2:30 when we wrapped up this puppy.
Jared said, "How fast can you be live?"
And I went and grabbed a tie and wrapped it around my neck and, tied it up, and then I'm on here and running out to the studio.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know how this went down. I literally hung up the Zoom call and Jared said, "Oh, the game's canceled." And our bosses come out there like, "How fast can you be live?" And I was like, "Really fast."
I got a text right as we were finishing up. I didn't get a look at it till we got off air.
Isn't that awesome?
Oh, you knew before? Come on, Coach. You see me? I'm looking at
I didn't have a chance to look at it.
I'm kidding. We were plenty fast getting up.
We're out here pretending, oh, this is real. And then the second we're done, we're like, hey, remember all that?
No, I did say that when we got back. I was like, remember what I just said? No, we're not having a game.
that whole thing we just spent hours studying for and, preparing names and
it's fine.
Tendencies.
Well, Zoom is going to kick me off here in 6 minutes. I have not upgraded to Pro yet next hour.
But one important note. If you're going to be, if you're doing the socially distant Thanksgiving thing, and I hope you are, with your friends and family, remember, on Thanksgiving Day, there is no time limit on Zoom. You have all day on Zoom if you want to. Yeah, it is free. We actually had it in the news last night.
I didn't know that.
So if remember, if you're going to have Thanksgiving, do it. Hey, be smart. Take care of your family. Make sure everybody gets out of it healthy and happy. And then,
I don't think that counts for work accounts.
It should count
Jared.
universally. So get your personal account out. Or what if we have the NBC4 Thanksgiving meal? We do it live on Zoom for 24 hours straight. We'll have a big audience, do you think?
I don't know, working.
Is that a hard pass? No? It's a shame.
It's all right. I'll tweet a picture of my plate or something.
Make a great apple pie.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Make sure you join us before the game on Saturday. We'll do 11:30. Jared, that sound good?
Sound good.
Okay, we'll do 11:30, and then we'll do post-game coverage, probably like 3:30 or 4. Me and Justin and Jared, and we have an extended morning show on Saturday morning as well. We'll make some appearances in that. You'll see Coach also. So thank you all for joining us very much. Thank you for your questions and admissions of day drinking. That was appreciated.
Yeah,
Levity.
that's a bold choice, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, you got any last advice for that guy? Like, what would be the go-to beverage on a Wednesday afternoon?
What guy?
The guy who said he was day drinking at Wednesday at 2 o'clock. What would be the go-to beverage, you think, for a Wednesday at 2?
He hasn't
Well, I'd
chimed
say-
in since.
What do you think? Like a like a
What
Bordeaux
I have
wine?
to say is, if this COVID gets any worse, we're all going to be a lot of day drinking.
Well, that won't have a lot else to do.
I'm going to start day drinking if Jason doesn't stop talking about 5G in these comments.
Relax.
I'm kidding. It's fine.
Relax,
Justin, you have
y'all.
at it. You let it out. Let it all out.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.